And again, always remember to try turning grain size and flux all the way down. Woo-hoo-hoo! R.I.P. Peter Runge. Today we are talking about SD Laika, artist behind That's Harakiri. Honestly, one of the best electronic albums of the 2010s. And today we're going to do stuff a little bit differently. I'm going to show you how to make some sounds, but then in the second half of the video, I'm actually going to show you how to build out like a composition in real time using those sounds. And before we jump into it, two quick things. Number one, my hair is wet, not greasy. And second of all, you know I can create many sounds, but what are the actual sounds I like to use? Yes, next week, some actual new music from ya boy coming out, so keep an eye out for that. Let's get down to business, and today we are making it about process. Yes, trust the process, trust the process. So I have some 808 bass drums here. So the secret Ableton tutorial of the day is Roar. So quick sidebar for a lesson on distortion. So the first like guitar distortion pedals ever literally just allowed you to turn the gain way up until the signal started distorting. And then they had something that turned it down, right? So that it wasn't so unbelievably loud. So this is basically at the heart of Roar. Roar just has a bunch of cool like modes for this and ways you can manipulate this as well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna turn the drive up by 16 decibels. And then I'm going to go to my shaper, and this is really the heart of everything right here, and I'm going to turn the level down by -16. And now you'll see I have all these different interesting shaper modes, and I've got this amount knob. So I'm going to show you three of my favorites, the first being Bit Crusher. I'm going to start turning up the amount. Okay, and here's the thing with SD Laika. So many of his sounds feel like they're about pushing things to the extreme until they almost begin to break up and kind of dissolve. And a really great way to do that, other than turning up the amount, is to mess with the bias. Okay, so I'm going to quickly show you two more that I really love. One is Polynomial. And you may notice that when we turn this up, we start to kind of lose that low end. So if you're ever worried about that, you can start to mess around with the tone knob. Right, so bringing it down, I start to bring back in some of that low end. And then my final one that I really like is Fractal. Okay, and you guys may notice that I actually don't use Roar that much. I'm always just putting an amp on blues mode. And the reason is because it's so simple, right? Once you open up Roar, there's all this other stuff here, and it can be a little intimidating and overwhelming. So right now what I'm gonna do is show you a little bit of what I call these like sound design home runs, which is just a really easy, untechnical kind of catch-all way of like making some interesting sounds. So what I'm going to do is open up this modulation menu. And you don't really have to know much about this, but I'm just going to show you. If you go over here to noise, and we have to sort of hit play to see this, but you'll see simplex. It's kind of this random line that's going all over the place. So more importantly, what we can do is we can go to the matrix section. This allows us to use these mod sources to control all of these knobs. So that simplex thing would be kind of just like randomly moving this around. I'm gonna just start mapping like lots of different stuff, maybe not the drive or the level, but everything else I'm just gonna start mapping it to the noise. Bias in there. Get frequency in there. That might cause us some problems, but we'll talk about that. We'll get the resonance in there. Yeah, and let's see what happens. Right now, to really dial this in, I can start changing the initial positions of these knobs. So maybe I'll put this back onto Polynomial. And again, you're noticing that the frequency knob, right, because it's a low pass filter, is occasionally just kind of getting rid of a lot of our sound. So in terms of those methods that make everything sound like they're kind of breaking up, I love this resampling filter here. Don't worry too much if this isn't sounding like amazing to you, because again, we just want to get some weird sounds. It doesn't have to be perfect. What I'm doing now is opening up another track that I have on resampling, and I'm just going to resample all of this. Right, and you notice that since I have the loop bars on, right, I can record multiple takes of this and like get lots of different sounds. But then if I create a new MIDI track, I can drag this in and you'll see that it actually has the whole thing. So I'm going to stretch this out, go to slice mode, and why don't we add an amp on blues mode and switch it to dual. And now I have all these really fun little cool slices. Okay, so the reason I said not to be too worried before about the sounds is because now that we have this in a simpler, we can also affect it with warp modes and transposition to get some really cool sounds. So I'm gonna hit warp, go to texture mode, and then hit ×2 twice. So already some really cool stuff. And again, always remember to try turning grain size and flux all the way down. Ooh-hoo-hoo. Yes, yes, yes. That may be our like and subscribe moment of the day. If you like that, like and subscribe. Again, and this gets even crazier when we begin to mess with transposition. So I'll go -12. But for me personally, I love this. I love this. I love this. I love this when you crank the transposition all the way up. Ooh-hoo-hoo. Maybe we can go to 36 here. Ooh-hoo. Yes, there we go. And of course, always try with the grain size all the way down. Wow. Wow, great stuff. Lots and lots of cool stuff here. Okay, now remember that you can do this whole process with anything. So I'm gonna take this break beat and we are gonna add roar. And again, we'll go drive up to 16, level down by 16, and let's go to say, I don't know, fractal. And again, we'll just do the same thing. Go to matrix and start mapping stuff. And you know what? I'm just going to pitch up the original loop by 12 semitones. Okay, awesome. And let's resample that. Sweet. And we will create a new MIDI track and drag that in. Go to slice mode. And you know what? Let's add an arpeggiator. Maybe we could throw an OTT on here, bump up the output. Okay, so I know this is the classic part where everyone says, hey, these sounds are cool, but what do I do with this? What do I do with this? I heard you in the comments, I listened, and so as I was creating this video, I sort of recorded myself going through the process of like building out sort of like a SD Laika-esque loop using this compositional process. So we are now gonna go back in time. So I have 3 tracks here. The first is I did that whole process we just did with some drums. Then I kind of have that process with some of those bass noises, but I have the transpose up to 48 and the grain size and stuff. And then I kind of have the original, more unedited bass. Okay, so I'm gonna make a 4-bar loop here, and I just have this at the beginning of every 2 bars. So now let's fill this out with the high bass stuff. I'm gonna make a MIDI clip, but I'm also just gonna play through and kind of play stuff with my keyboard and mess around. Oh, okay, wow, yeah. Sometimes just go with the first instinct. Genuinely, that's just the first key I hit, and it sounded really good. So I'm just gonna go find that key here, but then I'm gonna draw in the kind of rhythm that I want. So do something like this. Now I'm not really liking that sound so much, so yeah, maybe a little longer. Okay, cool. Yeah, I like that at the end. So again, the rhythms are always very weird and not super predictable. So I'm going to have like something else happen at the beginning here in the low bass section. See what other sounds I have. Okay, I think that gives us a little bit like of a skeleton. So let's do something with the drums now. So what's nice about having this little structure here is it gives me something that I'm anchored onto, but now I can just kind of play over it and like develop something that's a little bit less like programmed in and a bit more organic feeling. So I'm just going to pause and hit MIDI capture up here and just like keep this in. I think this is sounding decent. Okay, I actually don't want to add too much here, so I'm just going to go in and add like some small kind of fills sort of things. We can take this out. Just have something slightly different happen over here. And then at the very end of like a 4 bars, I always like to have something pretty crazy happen. So we're just going to resample. And let's see if we can do something super wild with this. Maybe pitch it all the way up. Actually sounded good with everything else, so I'll just bring the volume down a bit. And I hope you're seeing that, at least in my process, I genuinely do just try and ride with like fun mistakes that I hear. And I'm like, that sounds good. Like, let's go for it. Honestly, I'm thinking this sounds okay. So the last thing I'm going to do is just try and maybe get a melodic element in here. I feel like there's a lot of square waves in the mix. So let's just use drift and we'll just change this to a square wave. And I'm just going to go over here and mess with these modes. Try mono. It's kind of okay. Now we just need to, of course, really dirty it up. So let's get roar in there again. Why not? And a ton of reverb. Okay, I don't know if I'm entirely sold on that, but again, this is a nice way of just already beginning to like flesh things out arrangement-wise, is just have like a melodic bit that goes for a lot longer, right? And so now I can just duplicate these. Okay, and then as I said, the temptation here is just to like add more and more and more, but instead what we want to do is kind of look for moments where we can introduce little variations. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go onto the master channel and I'm going to add an instance of spectral time. Okay, now what I'm going to do is turn the dry wet all the way up to 100, and then I'm just going to start resampling. And I'm just going to start clicking freeze, like double clicking it to get different freezes. And you can change the fade in and out here to get it to be a little more gentle. Okay, cool. Now I'm just going to delete this, and now I have all these nice little bits that I can sort of insert as layers or as little fills. And again, when you have something really big like this, one of the best things to do is just take a little piece, find where you might want to insert it, right? So I'm like, okay, let's get something here. So I can just select all of this, hit 0 to turn it all off, and then go here, put my little clip here, and then use Shift Option Drag to audition little different parts. Right, so I'm like, okay, that didn't quite work. Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so as always, do I think this is the greatest thing ever? No. Do I think it's an incredible SD Laika remake? No. But I think what's important about this is it gives you a little bit of a sense of like, how do you actually kind of work compositionally in this way? How would you actually go about building something out? So yeah, let's just listen.